Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Daily Six. I'm here in my car on a hot summer morning. I've got the book of Ezekiel, chapter 20 open. Wonder if you can go there with me. Been doing a little bit of study, a little bit of research on the internet. I'm going to share with you about here in just a second. Ezekiel chapter 20. Get it open, and then come on, let's have a conversation. So I've been telling you this whole study of the Sabbath is brand new to me. I've known of the Sabbath. I've, taught the Ten Commandments before, of course, read the Ten Commandments, try to live by them. And, in my mind, I've always considered the Sabbath, keeping the Sabbath, that commandment from the Lord, just really being about, go to church on Sunday. Be sure that you give God a little bit of thought and perspective. Take a nap Sunday afternoon, rest, slow down, and then I'll just get back into my normal, cycles, normal activities. But as the Lord arrested me and said, Chris, I need you to slow down and I want you to see something different because I have a prescription to change the red zone, change the stress level that you've been living in. Well, then I really buckled down and did a little deeper Bible study. One of the tools I've used, and you can use this too, is BibleGateway.com. It's a free website. You got to put up with some of the advertisements on it. But you can put in, like a search for a particular topic. So I put in the word Sabbath in this topic. And there are over 154 thoughts in the Old Testament, 58 of them in the New Testament. And so I started going line by line, looking at every single one of them. And it'll just give it to you here as just a verse and about a sentence worth. And so I was able to scroll through this and look at these various teachings about the Sabbath in the whole of the Bible. And as I did, I was able to see a number of things we'll be sharing with you all this week and next week that's different than I'd ever imagined it to be, both in what God designed the Sabbath to be and how I can live with a real freedom and abundance and joy in it, but also in what it's not and what my barriers, why is it that I haven't been keeping a Sabbath well? Well, I found something as I'm going through all these different Old Testament passages. I found something about the book in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 20, where when I just read the little sentences without the context, even that grabbed my heart, particularly Ezekiel 20, verse 16, where God says, because they rejected my laws and did not follow my decrees, and they desecrated my Sabbath, because their hearts were devoted to their idols. And friends, that kind of grabbed me, right? Is there something in my heart that's devoted to idolatry that is keeping me from fully fulfilling God's vision, God's dream for the Sabbath? Now listen, real important that we understand we're reading this Old Testament teaching, these Old Testament laws through the lens of the New Testament. And we talked about just yesterday how 2 Corinthians tells us that if we're going to look at the law of God in the Old Testament and try to, manage our spiritual life by the nuts and bolts, okay, we're going to find a spiritual death that comes out of that. We've been freed from the judgment of the law by Jesus Christ, but not its principles. Jesus said, Matthew 5:17, I've come to fulfill the law, not do away with it. And so I can walk in Christ with this understanding. So that grabbed me. The idea of idolatry, I need to search that out in my heart. So I went to Ezekiel 20. Can you go there with me? The context here, God is speaking. This is several hundred years after God gave this law to Moses and the people of Israel. And he's going back and recounting the time at which he had gave them this law. And it was when, verse 8, they were rebelling against the Lord. They were not listening. They did not get rid of vile images they had set their eyes on, nor did they forsake the idols of Egypt. So here again, God is raising this issue of idolatry. The people of Israel were clinging on to idols. So I said I would pour out my wrath on them and spend my anger against them in Egypt. But for the sake of my name, I did what would keep my name from being profaned in the eyes of the nations. And so, verse 10, therefore, I had led them out of Egypt. I brought them into the desert. I gave them my decrees, made known to them my laws. For the man who obeys them will live by those laws. In other words, the laws are going to bring life. So God was already bothered by the people of Israel and the idols they were clinging to while they lived in Egypt. God wanted to be angry with him, but he said, no, I'm going to bring you out of Egypt, but there I'm going to give you laws by which you can live. In verse 12, one of those laws we've been studying, also, I gave them my Sabbaths. Do you see that? I gave them my Sabbaths as a sign between us. This is a covenant, a sign of what God is going to be in our life. I gave the Sabbath as a sign between us so they would know that I, the Lord, have made them holy. God is the one who makes you and me holy. But skip down to verse 16, would you? Because they rejected my laws, they did not follow my decrees, they desecrated my Sabbaths. For their hearts were devoted to their idols. Oh, friends, you could read this whole passage, and I hope you will as you give God 6 more minutes here as this video wraps up. But the thing that grabbed me is, why is it that I don't keep a Sabbath more carefully? Is it because the other things in my life I find to be too important? I find it too hard to cram an entire day of devotion to the Lord in with all the other things I have going on. And while the word idolatry or idols may seem a little harsh to us, what if there's God's wisdom in that? What if God is trying to reveal to me that there are things I'm clinging on to and giving way too large a space in my life? Could you inquire the Lord about that? Give God 6 more minutes and contemplate, do I have things in my schedule that God might call idols? Give him 6 more minutes, pray about that, and then come back tomorrow for more right here on the Daily 6.